1, 2, 3, be mine, sugar. 1, 2, 3, be... Oh, hey again guys, it's the BC Andrews Critiquer. Well, I've got some interesting old versus news in store for you all that'll take us back to our school days. But first, we'll be stopping by Matheson, Colorado to pay another little visit to the Selinsky family. No, they're TV incarnates. Not that kind of TV. Thank you. For those of you who didn't see my previous video about this topic, there was a spin-off series of the hit Rick Moranis movie Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in the late 90s that more than made up for having the worst special effects in media with its witty writing and engaging and likable characters.
Your dad's stomach, he drank us.
Funny, I don't feel drunk.
It's sadly not on Disney Plus at this time, although it probably will be once the upcoming sequel/reboot comes out. But chances are, once you watch just a few episodes of this masterpiece, you'll purchase every single episode on YouTube like I did. So why are we dropping into Matheson, Colorado, aka super obscure TV world again? Well, I have a little confession to make. I hadn't seen every single episode of this series when I made the review, and not long after I completed it, I saw an episode that became one of my new favorites and would have definitely made the list had I seen it prior to making the review, though just barely. More on that a bit later though. Anyway, at first I was like, oh well, the review's already out, next time I do a top 10 for a show, I'll watch every episode of this series prior. But I found I just really wanted to talk about this episode, and I am looking for more types of videos to do. So I've decided to give you all a mini review for this episode as if it were part of the top 10 video I released. And if you remember my clues from my last video as to what this episode would be about, think about a yellow submarine and also glorious Soviet Mother Russia. The few of you who are familiar with this series probably guessed that the episode in question is... Honey, Name That Tune. Let me hum a few bars for you about the premise. Diane and the kids are horrified. Why? Because Amy's just read in the TV guide that every episode of an old music show called Pop Time is airing that evening. And that's where Wayne claims he heard his favorite song 1, 2, 3 Be Mine from a Beatles knockoff group called the Bobcas, even though he barely remembers the lyrics, and literally no music company on the planet has ever heard of the song.
Don't forget the time he was almost arrested in the office of Rolling Stone.
And yet Wayne has a bad reputation of irritatingly trying to remember the lyrics to the song and dance to it, and his family knows he's going to force them to join him watching the entire marathon for the glorious moment of hearing a seemingly non-existent favorite song for the first time in 36 years. But his hopes fall when the song never appears, but Wayne's not giving up that easily and uses his time machine to go back to 1963 and hear the song himself. He sneaks backstage and manages to hear the Bobcats rehearse the opening to the song, and he's delighted to find his song is real. But he gets caught by the group's promoter who thinks he's a capitalist spy and begins his terrifying torture process.
Is example of superior Soviet technology. I call it tickling torture of doom. Now talk!
His family follows him to the past to rescue him, but thankfully the Bobcas beat them to it. Except not really. Okay, so here's where the fun stuff starts, and the reason why I'm playing a rock version of the USSR national anthem in the background. So get this, it turns out the Bobcas and their promoter were actually supporters of Joseph Stalin, and their 1, 2, 3 Be Mine song contains communist subliminal messages to brainwash the teens of America into overthrowing the government and turn the USA into a coal-shoveling communist dictatorship. Is that insane or what? And you have to listen closely in certain parts, but just listen to how ingeniously subtle the subliminal messages are.
Money is a root of evil.
Nick! Diane! Amy!
From your life. The West eats dreams like weevils and leads to war and strife.
I think he's the fifth Bobka.
Solid 1, 2, 3, big mind.
Oh, you guys, we have to help him. Come on, think!
Freedom is a bad thing, honey.
This music, I can see why Dad remembered it.
Working in a coal mine, honey.
It's catchy. Easy to dance to.
1, 2, 3, big mind. Trotsky. 1, 2,
Amy, we're in crisis mode here. We don't have time for this. Amy? Amy!
Wayne gets zapped back to the present because he had his time watch set for automatic return, and even though the song actually makes the subliminal messages in Pokemon look subtle,
I've got to buy Pokemon. I've got to buy it. I've got to buy it.
the Bobka's plan works, and Wayne finds upon returning to the present that the USA is looking a lot like the USSR. Okay, so based on what you've heard so far, I think you all can tell why I really wanted to talk about this episode. This was definitely one of the nuttiest, but nonetheless most clever and original ideas the writers ever came up with for the show. And yet I would have had to put it at the very bottom of the list if I did include it in my top 10 list. Okay, so I know what you're thinking now. How could this idea possibly be at the very bottom? And if you feel that way, then why did you even bother doing an extra video for this episode? Great questions. Let me explain. If you saw my top 10 episodes review, you may remember that a lot of my favorite episodes were simplistic premises that had great execution. Well, this one is the opposite. This was a premise served on a silver platter, but the execution, I'm sad to say, is absolutely atrocious. There's so many plot holes in this episode, it almost looks like Swiss cheese. Okay, so first let's address the one you probably noticed first. If the song never aired originally, then how did Wayne even hear it? Well, to be fair, they make an effort to explain this.
And I'm sure in some alternate timeline that song was played. It's a conundrum. That song's probably floating out in the ether somewhere heading to another galaxy.
Overthrow parents.
Really? That was the best you could come up with? Kudos for at least trying, but that is still a very half-assed and pathetic explanation. You might also be wondering, how did Wayne going to the past cause the song to end up being played and broadcast? Again, I have no clue. Their instruments aren't damaged with Wayne fixing them, they aren't booted by another act with Wayne convincing the manager otherwise. There's nothing that indicates they weren't going to play the song or that Wayne did anything to set their communist plot in motion. The Bobkas really just noticed him spying on them, think he's a capitalist spy, and drag him along in their performance because he knows too much. But the climax is probably where the biggest problems lie, and it warrants a CinemaSins ripoff.
Wayne! Daddy!
Diane!
The Bobkas?
Where is Wayne's past self who was running from the Bobkas when this originally happened?
Stop, you red menaces!
Why are the Bobkas now playing their song backstage with their audience instead of on stage like they were originally? And for that matter, why give a performance there in the first place? Talk about lame. Why are the teens brainwashed by the cliched love song lyrics instead of when the subliminal messages start like before? And why is Amy now immune to the song? She wasn't before. So yeah, these are pretty big setbacks that keep the episode from shining to its full potential. But it's not to say that the execution is all bad. The Bobkas are pretty funny villains.
Idiot. Why not tell them all our secrets? Like Soviet women's swim team is really men.
Hey pal, I gotta tell you, that's not really much of a secret.
Wayne going through many time eras to get to the 60s and stop the Bobkas also has a few laughs, as does the scene where the Selinskys try to sing the song on stage after defeating the Bobkas but realizing that they're live.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, be mine.
And you call that
Baby,
music?
1, 2, 3, be mine.
When I has him locker.
So, on the whole, the execution of this episode was decent at best, but atrocious at worst. But that really doesn't matter, because its premise of a Beatles-like band plotting to brainwash the American youth with communist subliminal messages in their songs to take over the world is just such a fun and crazy premise, I can easily forgive how it was carried out. This episode is a favorite of mine, and I'm sure it is for the few of you who already know about this series. Well, that's all I got. Join me next time when I do an old versus new of the 2 film adaptations of the mixed up files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. Well, I gotta... Oh, it's that song again. Well, good thing I'm not a teen or I wouldn't be immune to it. Well, I gotta overthrow parents. Wait, no. What I meant to say was overthrow parents. Wait, what's going on? I thought my teens were overthrow parents. Shrek, I need your help again!
Stop singing!
Ah, Shrek. always stopping the terrible singing of donkeys, mice, and now evil Stalin supporters. Bye, guys!